from Helena, Montana, which, if you know where that is on the west central side of Montana, right in the middle of the mountains. A state I never intended on leaving after I retired from the Army, and obviously I'm staying here. And Chad's one of the people that I think we've been in California and Florida, a few other places together, running the circuit, trying to get things solved. So I'm thrilled to be able to be here and talk to you folks about a number of things. I'll introduce you to what I'm doing and let you know how well it's working. And this is a network of trusted people that I'm working with nationally. And one of the examples is sitting over here from Kendall County. His name is Len Wass. Okay, connected to him through Navy veterans and people that I work with Restore Liberty, and called him up and said I was going to be here. And he said I live 3 towns down, so he is here. And he's part of the GOP in Kendall County, and they're working election integrity there hard as well. So you have allies outside of this county. So take a chance to get to know him. He's got an incredible background as well. But ultimately, and I was talking with a friend of mine in Montana, we came to the realization that our founders, our forefathers, mothers, fathers, and grandfathers built this nation. And they built a great nation. We won world wars, we kept other nations free, we put men on the moon, developed the internet, despite what Al Gore claims. We became ultimately very safe and comfortable as Americans in what we do. And that's okay. We just have to know that liberty is one of those things that we're going to have to constantly fight for, and that's become manifestly obvious to us now, since this last election and even before that. But this richness in some ways has made us soft, and we trusted government way too much, didn't we?
Yeah.
And they have violated that trust. We posted a picture yesterday on my organization that said the government's only job is to safeguard our liberty, and they are failing. And when you have an employee that is failing you that badly, your job is to fire them and find somebody who will do their job. I suspect we have some people in here who will do that job very well, as opposed to what we have now. And that's exciting because what you see here, I get to see in presentations like this across the country, in every state. Ultimately, communities coming back together. And I think it's extremely exciting. I recently read something that stuck out to me, and this is January 10th, 1963. The Honorable A.S. Hurling of Florida listed 45 communist goals to subvert liberty in America. I'm not going to read all 45 to you. I found 8 that seemed interesting to me that would stick out to us. The first one is capture one or both political parties in the U.S. I would say we're about 1.5, maybe more, depending on where you live. The Republican Party of Illinois is probably a little bit different than the Republican Party of Montana. But trust me, we are not as red as we look in Montana either. Use technical decisions of the courts to weaken basic American institutions by claiming their activities violate civil rights. That's how they get after elections. Even in our state, just went over 1 million people. The court has said that every single election integrity bill that we voted on and approved last cycle, the court just decided to throw it out. Get control of the schools, infiltrate the press, discredit the American Constitution, discredit America's founding fathers, transfer powers of arrest from police to social agencies. Montana, where I'm from, of course, is one of the worst in violating child protective services rights of parents. It's a terrible thing in Montana, not just because of the reservations, but just because of the court system that's in place. I'm sure you had your own stories in Illinois. I have no doubt about it. And the last one is create the impression that violence and insurrection are legitimate aspects of the American tradition. Those are 8 of 45, and they seem well on their way. Thank God for groups like this. We probably started at about 2 or 4 people and are growing to 50 and more. They're happening everywhere across the country. How this happens, though, is because of our elections and our election systems. And I was asked to talk a little bit about election integrity. And one of the reasons why is I had the pleasure to be put on the team of what's called the Cause of America, and that is a national election integrity team that was started through the Wendell team, who's one of my biggest supporters in what I'm doing with the organization I'll be soon telling you about. And being able to look at the election integrity infrastructure from the top national level all the way down. And the biggest thing we learned about that was, frankly, national election integrity is really at the states. And the federal government, as you know, is just trying to take it over and take it away from the states. And that is terrible. The federal government is trying to take over everything. So here are a few things that we found worth noting as time has gone on from 2020. The first one is that voters by a margin now of 52 to 40% believe cheating affected the outcome of the 2020 U.S. elections. I'm surprised 40% don't, but part of me is not surprised either. But that number is growing. Included in the number is 34% of Democrats and 38% of the people who would say that they likely and will support Joe Biden. So they know that cheating affected the elections. Some of them are just enjoying the fact that there was cheating and they're taking advantage of it because it holds their position. The Republican Party, by the way, is fighting this election integrity as hard as the Democratic Party. I doubt that's a surprise in this room either. I'm sure you've seen it. But that evidence continues to mount. The most recent numbers are 255 to 368,000 excess votes were cast in 6 swing states that were excess. And I would say this is a minimum because last time I was here, I talked to some folks, and I think the number in South Chicago alone was somewhere near 200,000 that were suspect. So whatever we find is probably a whole lot worse than what the reality is. And we just have to keep digging. One of the biggest problems also is the fact that there are people that are acting like they're on our side in this effort, but they're not. The Maricopa County audits, about half the people were concerned about our election integrity, about half the people were worried about how they could make money off of it or how they could subvert the entire effort. Unfortunately, in the meantime, the main effort for election integrity in getting at a state that could potentially, decertify their votes was Wisconsin. And they're getting closer all the time. My Wisconsin state director is part of that effort there. And they're quietly making inroads into this effort. And I hope they succeed. I'm not the kind of person who thinks the 2020 elections are going to be overturned. But I do believe that through the efforts of states like Wisconsin and what's going on, that we could magnify and expose even more what is going on to those who aren't paying attention even still today. What else happened? Well, everybody heard about the Kraken, right? Release the Kraken? That kind of turned into My Little Pony. Not so much, that's Garrison, by the way. Got to give kudos to some kids out there who helped me with that one. Trust the plan. Everybody's heard trust the plan? There is no plan. There's no Southern White House. There's no military is answering to Trump in secret. None of that exists because the answer is not the plan. The answer is not the Kraken. The answer is you and me, just average citizens, getting out there and putting our eyes on everything. That doesn't even count the fact that we know that our courts are corrupt. These recounts only count the same ballots and come back and say we got the same number. It's amazing. That Zucker bucks were spread across the country. We were second in the nation for that. We have counties in Montana that have 1,000 people that got lots of money from the Zucker bucks because they're trying to flip a red state of Montana by taking advantage of the reservation land. By the way, it's illegal to take private donation money from any organization for elections in Montana. I don't know if it's illegal here or not. It probably is.
Should be.
But yeah, if it's not, it should be. Absolutely. And ultimately, this election integrity effort in many ways turned into what I call a celebrity circus. There's a lot of people running around this country that are on a national stage, whether it be on the news or whether it be on an actual physical stage in front of thousands of people, that you think are on your side, and really what they're doing is they're using the election integrity efforts to bring money into their organizations, and they're doing a very good job of paying themselves, but they're doing a terrible job of getting any kind of results that matter. And that's one of the biggest challenges we have as an organization that I will talk to you about here very soon. Those Liberty-themed public events, I've been to some of them. Some of them are phenomenal. They have great people. Some of them are just circus shows. You go there, I've spoken to groups of 2,000, 2,500, 3,000 people, and I'll ask them and I'll invite them to come forward and meet me in a corner somewhere and say, here's how we can get to work with what I am doing and the people in my organization are doing. I think the most I've ever gotten out of an event like that was 5 people. There's a lot of folks that go to these events. They go, they feel good, they unfurl their flag, they do a rally, they furl their flag back up, they go home, and they wait for the next one. It's sort of like the political junkie circus. it doesn't get anything done. And that's one of the biggest challenges we have, is we got to get away from the theater and get to the work. And the work is hard to do. As a result, ultimately, those of us who are putting in the real efforts, those of you who are putting in the real efforts for election integrity and many other efforts that you're involved in, suffer because all the attention is going to the people who are over here in the corner making all the noise and everybody doing all the work. Well, in the military, we call this, those of you who are veterans, you've probably heard something like this: 10% of the people do 99% of the work. That is true in these efforts as well. And it's terrible to see. I think I sleep maybe 2 hours to 3 hours a night, and we're constantly doing the work. You know, we call it taking the shovel into the salt mine, and that's all we're ever doing. But we're getting results. They're not massively public, but they're effective. And that's really all that ultimately matters. We can't just keep going, because that Great Reset's a real thing, regardless of what it looks like in the end. I think the real Great Reset coming is we the people taking back this nation from a government who's outgrown its. Ultimately, with election integrity, my view is that if those who say that this 2020 election was the most secure election in American history should be the people out there who take the Dominion systems and the ES&S systems and every other system that's out there and lay it out on the table in all of its infinite detail and be willing to show every single one of you every bit of it. They should be so confident that there's nothing they should be trying to hide. It shouldn't be in a contract that you can't see inside the Dominion machine. You can't see inside an ES&S machine. You can't review stuff without going through, almost 2 years now of litigation. It's embarrassing. I planned election efforts in Afghanistan that were more secure than our American elections here. It's really quite simple, but they've made it difficult in order for it to work against us. I was at the Michael Lindell's Cyber Symposium, which of course is an event that got trashed in the news, but the reality was a lot different. We sat there with a group of people who were all skeptics, and the ES&S machine and the Dominion system machine both got hacked within 2 or 3 minutes by your standard cell phone. Easily done. It's not hard. But they're under contract through your secretaries of state often, and those contracts mean and say you can't look in there. The hardware, the software, the systems, all of it is hidden. That's one of the things that you have to get through to your legislators if you can. And that's why when I get to the Restore Liberty part, we're going to talk about building things back from the foundation up rather than the roof of the house down, for those of you who know construction. Here are some solutions and some things that I did in Montana and with other election integrity groups. Some of this was because I'm the county chairman for the GOP in Lewis and Clark County, Montana, which is our state capital, which I got about half the committee working against me because they're full rhinos. And we've built a rhino hunting team, and we're quite effective. Who here has heard of the Precinct Project? A couple people? Yeah. If you do not trust in the GOP in your county or in your state anywhere, the best solution is to fix it. And that's to get into the precinct officer position and take up all those seats and turn the GOP back to what it's supposed to be. Now, I'm a firm believer that you don't need a party to get anybody elected. But that's one of the things that if I'm going to take the time to complain about the GOP, then I'm going to take the time to fix it. Or at least give it a chance. So we had a 7-person executive team, of which 6 were rhinos, and 1 was the treasurer, who can really tell with the treasurer. But we kicked out all 6 of those executive team members and put 6 constitutional conservative people in their place. When you do that, you're going to find people wanting to come and join you because you're different. You're not just Democrat Republicans running in the same race pretty much at a dead heat. You're stepping away and being a little bit of a change. One of the things I would encourage people to do is think about this. This has worked for us. I split it up into election accountability and election integrity because it was getting a little bit muddled. And what I mean by that is I built an election accountability team that would look backward from our current day and at past elections and past data and past information that focused purely on that and brought out all the information from what happened in order to magnify that to our county commissions and to the elections office. And as they're solely focused on that, I got an election integrity team that solely focuses on your precincts, your poll watchers, your election judges, and those kinds of things that make sure that we're not so focused on 2020 that 2022 has snuck up on us and we've completely forgotten and we've repeated the same thing. Okay? And I'll give you an example. Last election cycle, we turned in 5 names for election judges. And every one of them was, of course, ignored because we think that she got paid far too many Zuckerbucks and was rewarded with a future position in technology. This year, we just turned in 43 names. By the way, I didn't just turn them in and then walk away. We emailed it to them with return receipt. We walked in with paper copies and made them sign for them. We videoed it. I don't know if you videotape anymore, or whatever you do with phones now. We recorded it, dropping it off, read all the names off, handed it off to them and said, we expect every single one of these people to be contacted and to attend the election judge training. Every single thing we do with regards to elections, we should prove it in multiple ways and have all the evidence ahead of time instead of trying to capture it afterwards. It's pretty effective. We've scared them so much that half the elections office quit. We were fine with that. Worked out great. Stay so focused on 2020 that we forget about 2022. Keep focused on that as well. Build those teams. Get the poll watchers out there. Get the election judges trained. And if you're doing either one of those two, with whatever your state law is, and you've got 20 ballot boxes around here, find 20 volunteers to go watch them. Why not? We have laws in Montana that say you can't be within 100 feet of a polling location or a ballot box doing electioneering. Okay, that doesn't mean I can't be at 101 feet with a telephoto lens making sure that everything is legitimate all night long. Right? By the way, one of the other things we're doing is we're creating alternative media to be able to get the word out about what we're doing. So if you've got the passion and desire, find a way to start your own media outlets. My wife and I have come up with this idea that we want to create a journalism school in Helena, Montana to bring people and teach them what it's like to be a real journalist, rather than just someone who reprints the Associated Press story. That's part of what we're doing as a solution. We can't get our hometown paper, the Helena Independent Record. It's as much trash as the Chicago Tribune probably is as well. Some of you may have heard about bonds for the wind. Anybody ever heard of that? Works. We've done it, and we have people who can tell you how. My Mississippi State Director called on the bonds for their entire school board and their district leadership, and they got rid of all their mask mandates that night. That's just one example of what Bonds for the Wind can do, if your state law supports it. And if you don't know what that is, just I think it's bondsforthewind.org or .com, one of the two. They'll teach you everything you need to know. Bottom line of all this is don't not do something, do it all, because it's all been done to you for years. So return the favor. We're pushed to get rid of the machines in every way, shape, and form. We're just as bad as any other state in Montana. AS&S is terrible. I ran for state legislature. I knocked on 3,000 doors. Our districts are 10,000 people. I lost by 500 votes. I did an informal canvassing when I was knocking on doors. She didn't stand a chance. Somehow I lost. I suspect I know how now. Do all you can to get rid of the machines. On the flight here, I was able to watch a show. You may have heard of it, called Braveheart. Yeah, okay. It was a great lesson, I know it's a somewhat fictional story about a real event that happened. But the lesson for me, again, got magnified, that just because you might lose doesn't make the fight not worth it. And I've lost a lot. I've learned a lot of lessons, but I'm very happy to be standing here in front of you saying that I'm part of the fight. I know you're all part of the fight. So keep doing it, even if you think that you may lose in the end. It's still worth it, no matter what. In time, I suspect there will be victories for all of us. This leads me to an organization I started called Restore Liberty, going into our 3rd year. This started in January 2020 with building small trusted teams with people getting involved in local political action. Of course, this was before the election, and this is in the middle of a deeply Democratic area where I live. That expanded very quickly to multiple counties in Montana, and then it grew to multiple states across the country right now as it stands. Ultimately, we are a national platform to local elections. We believe in local elections are critical. We are a national platform for a lot of different things. We focus on school boards and judges, but ultimately we train also grassroots efforts across the country in legislation, how to write it, how to read it, how to testify to it, from how you dress to how you speak, digitally or in person, to your legislators. One of our training arms is Grassroots Gold out of Texas, and they're the reason why they have a Texas heartbeat bill and election integrity bills and a lot of other things. That's one of the keynote things that we work on, is a lot of grassroots efforts. We endorse candidates without apology. Tired of the lesser of two evils approach is the bottom line. Because if the lesser of two evils is still evil, why would you vote for it? So we pick the best quality and best kind of candidates you can get, and we endorse them for office. And if you think that's a hard process, it is. In Colorado Springs, El Paso County, Colorado, we endorsed 15 candidates. 2 of them are statewide candidates. Every single one of them dominated their caucus votes by 64% or more, and are moving on to the primaries. And people are reaching out to my Colorado State Director to find out who to vote for elsewhere in the state of Colorado. We also align ourselves with America First and Freedom Caucus members within state legislatures in about 5 states, including with me in Montana. We work directly with them in writing things along the lines of Second Amendment support, First Amendment support, medical freedom, things like that. And it's been extremely effective to get citizen voices into the legislatures, in some cases as a voting member of a small panel. That happens in Mississippi, Colorado, Texas, Montana, and Florida right now, and we're growing it the best we can with what we have. We also have a mission to where we are joyful warriors. And you'd think that was a small thing, but every single time we're in front of a legislature, we're talking to groups or whatever, our goal is to always be happy. And you think that's kind of cheesy, but they're trying to demoralize you and drag you down and defeat you in so many different ways. As soon as you stand up in front of a group like that and you're smiling and happy, they can't stand it. And so the more they can't stand it, the happier I get. And I don't know how many of you are faith-based or church-going type folks, but I guarantee you, when I get the entire team on the Zoom meeting across the nation once a month, we open in prayer, we close in prayer, and we're not ashamed. There's no reason to work through the last portion of this because I want to get to the Q&A and not take up all your time. But our structure is we have a 7-person executive team. I'm retired Army. My co-founder is retired Brigadier General Blaine Holt. He's a contributor on Newsmax. I take care of Fox News. Both of us do a lot of radio work. I've got a PAC director who's been doing it for 25 years along with writing policy. Got a PR team in Texas who's been doing that for almost 30 years and knows everybody in media, it seems like. I've got a deputy director who's currently serving in the Border Patrol. You can imagine his challenges right now. And I've got a fundraiser who's a tech startup doing a lot of hard work there. The last guy is our campaign advisor to talk to people who've never worked campaigns before. And he's currently running the campaign for a lieutenant governor candidate out of Wisconsin. Fortunately, he also used to work for me in the Army. So that worked out pretty well. We have nearly 35 state directors. We have a 501c3, C4, and a super PAC. The first 2 are run in Montana. The last one's run out of Miami with Denise, who's been running them for decades. Who here has heard of Van Taylor in Texas for the congressional seat? One? Okay. In the news recently, Van Taylor was one of these guys who is a Republican rhino in Congress who was running again, and they found out some stuff about him having an ISIS pride. Look it up, I can't explain it. But we had a small part in making sure that he stepped out of that race, and we endorsed his replacement. Small victories here and there, but every single one of them counts. So our PAC is effective. Those are part of our successes. Our leadership's in place, 350 media engagements since July last year, taking over El Paso County, Colorado on the GOP side. the Van Taylor stepping down, and 57 candidates in 28 states endorsed, each one of them getting more and more attention as people figure out how hard it is to get our endorsement and why, and the things that it takes to get there. You've probably seen it too. One of the biggest things you're fighting is apathy. This is a small team, right? Small group of folks doing a whole lot of work. Apathy is taking over a large part of our population as people keep moving on because they think that pendulum is going to keep moving back and forth from Trump to Biden to back to whoever and just keep going left and right. I'm a student of history. I've traveled the world. I've lived in communist countries and socialist countries, and the pendulum's not swinging back unless we push it over there. So we have to do this now, no matter how many of us there are. And in the end, if you lose, at least you're standing there knowing you tried. Talked about the liars, cheaters, and grifters, the people that are doing all the fundraising out there that are taking money away from organizations that are effective and doing the real work. Ask the America First Project what they're really doing with millions of dollars. Nobody can really tell you. And I refuse to be one of those organizations. We're extremely thrifty to the point of I tell people if you're going to travel, you stay in a cheap hotel, you go through an Arby's drive-through, and if there's a donor or fundraiser, you don't wine and dine them, because if they're in for liberty, they're in. If they're not, they're not. I'm not here to oppress anyone. There's also too much emotion tied up in things that just aren't true. I run around telling people, you can listen to the QAnon videos all you want, but please stop there. Okay? That stuff is just designed to get you to do nothing. It's right up there with trust the plan and its ability to be trusted. It's just garbage. It's trying to get us all to stop from doing the hard work. All I can say is, speaking for myself and most of the people in my organization, we're just going to do the hard work. We don't care about any attention. We don't care about credit. I retired after 28 years of service. I intended to stay in Montana. I intended to be a dad and a husband again. I intended to do a lot of things. And of course, God laughs and says, well, that's neat. And he throws you off the cliff. And you just look up to see what the color of the parachute is this time. Because I'm pretty sure my wife and I have lived a life. You know, if you jump off a cliff, you expect to land somewhere and then be able to continue on with your life. What we've done is more like a staircase. We jump, we land, we walk a little bit, there we go again. But that's okay. This is worth it. And ultimately, what I did was I quit a second job. I had a healthy retirement, and I was going to live that quiet, peaceful life in western Montana, ride a lot of motorized equipment, and do all the things that the environmentalists hate. And God said, no, you're not. I need you to do this. And we started building that organization. And the savings is gone. I quit the job. Everything is on the table. And no matter what, if I'm standing there alone at the end, which I know I won't be, I don't care. Because for the sake of my kids and my grandkids, and I dare say that many of you would say the same thing, that no matter what we have to sacrifice as parents now for their future, it's worth every single bit of it. And I'm okay with losing it all. So, thank you all again for letting me come down and visit you from Montana. I'm glad there was a backup as my blizzard took effect up there. Winter sometimes goes through July. And I'm thrilled to be here to see fellow fighters in Illinois, because we know that Illinois is not the problem, Chicago is. God bless you all for being here, for standing in that gap alongside of all the rest of us who are doing the same thing. And just know that you are nowhere near alone. There are many millions of people doing the same thing across the country today, and I get to talk to them. It's encouraging.
Hey, thanks for coming. Appreciate it. I'm Brad Rochdale. We're here in Geneva. Just moved here from Texas, so I'm getting used to the situation here. Appreciate you.
What'd you do?
You moved here for love.
Is there a line in the sand or a point of no return or a contingency plan to shift focus from revamping the federal government to secession? And if so, why? And if not, why?
For the easy one.
Yeah.
There may be. I don't have a definition for myself, and I don't think most people do. I think those kinds of things just happen. If they do, in any way, shape. I mean, even our Revolutionary War was just one of those things that it wasn't like a sudden decision to do it. It grew over time into what it was. And something lit the spark, right? And whether it's what you described or something different, we talked briefly about or mentioned the Great Reset. I call it the Great Reset. I prefer to have that Great Reset happen at the ballot in a legitimate election to where we take the control of government away from those who would act as our bosses and return back to what they're supposed to be, which is servants of the people.
Thanks for being here and making the journey. It's a long journey. I've been to Montana. So my name is Ron Fogel. Will be on the ballot in June as a precinct committee person here in Geneva. So my first official office, I guess, right? But anyway, so there's a lot of buzz in the media these days about the term messaging. Okay, and so when you talk about voter integrity and these voter integrity laws that are being passed in Texas and other places that are getting challenged, and the Democrats are playing hardball by using the term playing the racist card on all these things, whereas the Republican Party and the Republican media are playing wiffle ball by using the term voter ID, taking the integrity path on that, rather than calling a spade, which is trying to prevent cheating. So why are the Republicans not using an anti-cheating message to counteract the racist message that Democrats are using?
I think personal opinion on what I've seen is as soon as you reach the state level GOP in a lot of states and then go into the national, that the people that actually drive the messages that get out across the country, those same people have no interest in winning the election integrity fight. They're partly to blame for it, and they're often the people who benefit from it themselves. So why would they want to disrupt something that's actually working for them? And that's why I think that communist goal of taking over one or both parties in this country is probably 1.5 or higher, because there are so few of us that want to return the party back to its actual platform, while our national and our state organizations are working against us just as hard as the Democrats. So the messaging has to be the bottom up. It has to be very, very local.
Thanks for your service.
Thank you.
And a continued service. What is your opinion on Convention of States? Article 5, amendment changes, that kind of
I ask that every time I do this. Good thing it's a trap, as always. I recognize the arguments on both sides, its weaknesses and its strengths, and part of the reason why Restore Liberty is what it is because I'm trying to make it irrelevant whether a convention of states happens or not. I think we need to get people into office under the Constitution and the structure that we have. I'm a big fan of a balanced budget. I'm a big fan of term limits, but I'm also a big fan of term limits being the people getting involved in electing the people who are supposed to be there. I understand those arguments. So as Restore Liberty is concerned, we don't take a position on the Convention of States because we've created something that's supposed to replace it in many ways. And I'll use this opportunity to tell everybody something that's going on here, that's going on in June. So June 10th and 11th in Frisco, Texas, is the States' Rights Summit. And it's going to be the first nationwide summit of its type since about the Civil War, bringing in 20 legislators and 20 grassroots leaders per state into a church in Frisco, Texas, to talk about how to take back the power of the federal government, return it to we the people, and emphasize the 9th and 10th Amendments of our Constitution. That's our answer to the Convention of States, is to replace it with something better. And that better is we the people taking it back for ourselves, no convention needed.
One of the problems we have is professional politicians, and it was never intended that they should be there. They should have served one term or two and gone home. But once they're in there, they get the taste of power. Once you get the taste of power, you can't get rid of them because their party will keep them in, because now they're starting to climb the ladder to chair committees. That is, I think, the biggest problem we have. And anytime you want to go for, term limits, they're gonna fight it like hell. And they always fight it for that very reason, because that's the base of their power, is seniority. You can't get rid of the seniority system until you get the term limits. That's what the big fight's always gonna be about. We talk about professional politicians and the support they have. A lot of support comes from people that just keep voting for the same people and don't pay attention. We've seen the Democrats, I've talked to some of them. The problem with this is my grandfather voted Democrat, my father voted Democrat, and I vote Democrat. Their party changed, but they don't pay attention because they're either stupid or lazy. And that's the whole problem with them. And that's why they keep voting that way. And you can't talk to them because it's like a solid rock. So this is what you gotta contend with when you do that. And when you go with the Republican Party in Illinois is damn near dead because it was killed by people like that who got to the top and did nothing. Kane County, Western Kane County in particular, where I'm from, they had a Republican organization that 20 years ago was very strong. It's damn near dead now because it was vanished. There are almost no committeemen out there in certain of the townships. One township now has 12 precincts, one committeeman on the ballot. 12 precincts, only one precinct has it's terrible. So this is what you're up against. If you get people that are active and are gonna get in there and fight. What happened with the Tea Party? We won, so everybody went home and forgot about it. And of course, the Democrats never go home. So this is what we're up against. That's about all I got to say. Thank you.
2022 is the congressional and senate elections, and I get about 2 to 4 inches of send me money mail every day in my mailbox. And I'm very reluctant to send a dime to these rhinos. Can you give us some guidance on how our election donations might be well used and where we should send them?
What I tell people, at least this works in the county where I'm the chairman for, and it sends the rhinos hacking, out into the city and basically trying to trash my reputation, whatever it's worth, with everybody around. But I just tell them, don't fund the central committee. Fund the candidate you love, and just stick to that. How do you identify that candidate? Well, if you're working within a committee structure, create a team that works on researching candidates, and it has a questionnaire, maybe a scorecard, doing things like that. If you do not have one of those, what I did, it's going on just over 2 years now, is we built an organization called the Corridor Project. Here you might call it the Three-Headed Eagle Alliance, or something like that. But we helped the candidates we believed in, whether it was a nonpartisan race, Republican, or whatever that may be. And we paralleled alongside of the GOP for about 1.5 years, supporting races. We have open primaries, so we can kind of take advantage of that system to our own end. And so we played along right next to them. So there'd be people in the GOP that just happened to be part of this thing called the Corridor Project, and it's built on how my hometown is structured. And at a certain point in time, every single one of those people jumped into the GOP, took over all the precinct seats that we could, elected the new executive team, and now we're changing bylaws to where we can endorse candidates over others when we know that one's a rhino. Anybody in here heard of Ryan Zinke, former Department or Secretary of the Interior? Okay, in Montana, we know he is a full rhino. Straight up, there's no way to hide it. How many people know that elsewhere though? Does anybody in this room know that? Okay, Navy, Marine. Go figure. But that's just one of the ways we use the network of people and the state directors that we have. Is like, I don't endorse people in Florida from Montana. I reach down and I talk to Bethany, and I talk to other people that are in the area and say, who is this person? We're bringing that human component into it rather than just have a questionnaire that they can cheat on easily. That has helped us immensely identify the right kind of candidates, like the Doug Mastriano for governor of Pennsylvania. Those kind of people that are out there that are real, and separate them away from the fakes. And there's a lot of fakes, as you well know. It may work for you. When you watched August of last year, the catastrophe that was Afghanistan, you had a division commander on the ground in Kabul, you had a corps commander in Fort Bragg, North Carolina, watching over that, and you had a chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff watching over all of it, and a Secretary of Defense named Lloyd Austin, right? I've worked for every single one of them in my past, and I know them well. Every single one of them is not worthy of leading our soldiers in any way, shape, or form. And that came as a surprise to me in some ways, because I've worked very closely with some of those guys. But on the flip side, I get calls from veteran people all the time who are being railroaded out of the military because they won't take the vaccine, or because they didn't take it the right way, or because of any excuses that the chain of command can come up with, because someone's actually fighting back against the system. A former warrant officer who worked for me in Fort Carson, Colorado, just had their 7th kid a few months ago. He's getting driven out of the Army, denied his promotion and his move and everything, and potentially losing his retirement because somebody falsified his records. It wasn't him, it was a medic. But because it has the word COVID attached to it, and he's fighting back against it, they're pushing him out. It is costing him thousands of dollars in legal fees. That's one example for how you kill a patriot's career in the military. The morale in the military is low. Not only because of COVID, because they gotta go get taught this woke garbage that gets put on slides in front of them all the time. They're wasting their time, and rather than actually be ready for a fight, they're making sure to get indoctrinated politically, just like our kids are in school all too often. So the morale right now is tanking. Are we ready for what's in front of us after we're seeing what's happening in Russia, Ukraine, what could happen in China, Taiwan, what's happening with Iran, Syria, Israel, and all those countries around there? I don't think so. It would be disastrous to this nation if we were to try to deal with the kind of conflict we're seeing in the Ukraine. First of all, my co-founder and I, of course, get asked this question a lot because we're asked to analyze these things a lot based on our background. And regardless, it isn't Russia all bad, Ukraine all good, and U.S. coming in with NATO to be the hero. That's right. And there's just no way. Which government is corrupt? Russia, Ukraine, or the U.S.? Yes. Okay. So, as Restore Liberty, we stand on the side of the people who suffer in what we call the global Game of Thrones. The kings and queens are going to position themselves to get themselves in positions of power and wealth. We prefer to stand and help the people who suffer in that process, ultimately. Military analysis-wise, so far, very few surprises, other than the fact that it took so long for Russia to pull back from Kyiv. I expected they would actually get into the thick of Kyiv and get into a nasty fight before they ended up realizing it was too expensive to take in total. That's 350 square miles of an urban area. And if anybody's ever been involved in urban conflict or trained it, that is the hardest fighting you can imagine. But kind of always suspected that their goal was to slice off the eastern side of the Donbas region, solidify the land bridge that lets them take full advantage of the Crimea, and settle for that if they couldn't get the whole country. Clearly the sanctions aren't working. What was supposed to be a deterrent turned into a punishment, which turned into a poor one. And Russia, for 4 years ago, turned in everything they had into gold, and was planning for this for a long time. I suspect in the end that the Ukrainians will win a very expensive fight. We'll probably have to seek something to make it end, but Russia will be paying for this for years to come because the Russian people do not like this. This is truly Putin's war. We're talking to people that are right up against Zelensky, but I suspect it would be a great idea to preserve all of America's actions in the Ukraine.
Corrupt leaders in the military could change? It's a simple question, but I'm curious.
Another easy one. Good. One of the things that I guess we talked about messaging in here before with Restore Liberty. What we try to tell as many people as we possibly can is your ability to reach out right now and directly impact the Department of Justice, the CIA, and the White House structure is minimal. But it's also something we should probably not spend most of our effort on. Now, I do a lot of construction work. I'm building a garage right now when it's not snowing. I renovate houses. And we talk to people about how when you build a house, you start from the foundation and you work your way up to the roof. Right now, we've got to start at the foundation. We've got to work local politics. So you want to fix the White House, fix your county clerk of courts. And if we do that across 3,500 counties and trickle that up into our national structure, given that we have the time to do it, that's how we reform the DOJ and the CIA and all those kinds of things, because we find the people who should be in servant leader positions and elevate them through their success and their servant-minded leadership over time. Do we have time? I don't know, but we got to start somewhere. We can't fix the swamp from the top down, just like you can't build a house by starting at the roof and working your way to the foundation. So let's start here in this room and get these right people involved in office. When you start doing that, all the rest of that will happen over time. It's more of a marathon.
Russian invasion of Ukraine as a result of blowback from the 2014 CIA orchestrated Orange Revolution in Ukraine?
I believe that is part of it.
Yeah.
It's kind of like when you're in school and asked what caused the American Civil War, and then being asked to give a 10-second answer. And that's the hard part about being on media too, is they're asking you questions that could take hours to explain, and you've got about 12 seconds to try to make sense out of it. I believe that is part of it. Is America's involvement in the Ukraine part of this? Probably. Yes. But is Russia's? Certainly. You know, what's Ukraine's role in this? Absolutely. What about Moldova, its close neighbor, who's probably getting looked at next? All of these things are far more complicated than A and B, and that's the answer. We're done. But yes, our involvement in fomenting revolutions in Ukraine to make them more pro-Western has certainly not helped. But we'll see where it goes.
So right after we witnessed Grand Theft Auto on November 3rd, and the weeks past that, cases were being, black letter law cases were being scripted and then sent to the Supreme Court. And upon that time, I remember doing a little research. Was there ever precedence? Were we ever here with the Supreme Court with having to hear a contested election? And I saw a quote from Sandra Day O'Connor, and she, after she retired, she was questioned, and she said that one of the hardest things, one of the most regretful things, was the ruling that they made in the Al Gore George Bush Chad case, and she said that that was something that they all, in hindsight, regretted participating in. Do you think that that particular thing is the main reason why this whole thing didn't get adjudicated correctly with the Supreme Court? Or do you think that Mayor Giuliani's and Sidney Powell's approach, which by the way, even David Clemente's take on it was that it was really good black letter law cases that were brought to the Supreme Court. And we did have dissent from Clarence County. So my question is, can we even depend on the Supreme Court if we produce enough evidence of fraud from Lindell's team, from Maricopa County, from Jovan Pulitzer, from all these other people, or maybe your group, if we produce enough fraud, would that be enough inculpatory evidence to take it to the Supreme Court where we could actually see 2020 decertified?
Can't even find one. Oh, that's too tough. That's too tough.
Yeah, no, it's thank you for that.
Sorry, buddy.
No, I think we've watched recently over a few rulings at the Supreme Court that The Constitution is somewhat relative still, despite the makeup of the Supreme Court now. Vaccine mandates and various things that are clearly not something that the Supreme Court should be dealing with. I personally don't see the 2020 election being decertified and turned over in any way, shape, or form. I think we need to fight for the future, despite knowing what happened in the past, and knowing that we still have to continue to magnify what happened then as well. But there is the potential of what's standing in the way right now are people like Robin Voss in Wisconsin. You know, that's one example. It's happened in Maricopa. It's happened to other places. But ultimately, this comes down to the same process we described about building the foundation. In Montana, one of the biggest things coming up in this next session is judicial oversight. And I'm part of a group called the Montana Citizens Council on Judicial Accountability. Our judges have gone rogue far too often in a lot of different topics, not just election integrity. And when they start thinking that they're the ones that get to make the law from behind the bench, then they are failing their duties. And the only way for us to fix that is to find people to replace them. We have the only conservative judge for the 16 years running for our state Supreme Court in Montana called Jim Brown. Hopefully he'll win. He'll be the first one. As far as decertifying 2020, good. I hope that would be nice, but I'm skeptical at this point, and I don't think the Supreme Court will help us.
Can you define woman?
I married one.
But are you a biologist?
How about
Are
this
you
alternative?
certified?
I kind of, when the Supreme Court didn't come through for us in 2020 or 2021, if the states themselves, the state legislatures decide to withdraw their electors, wouldn't that compel the House to recertify or decertify, basically, if they fall below 270? If, say, Arizona and Wisconsin, which are definitely in process, or maybe just even Georgia, I don't know what stage they're at, but if their legislatures decide to withdraw their electors, that would put it in terms back in the House to actually elect their they have a constitutional process to go ahead and elect the president based on an inconclusive state election, don't they?
And that process goes through the state legislatures based on their dominant parties.
That removes the Supreme Court. It's actually up to the state legislatures and then the House to decide based on the state legislatures withdrawing their electors.
And they vote based on their state legislatures' votes, which are predominantly Republican. Will we get there? I don't know. Part of the problem is that 22 months after the election, all those records are going to disappear even more.